Gasp.
There it is. Yeah, so now you can all shut off your videos. No. Thank you for coming to um, the end of summer virtual coffee hour. As we were chatting about earlier, before everybody joined in, we started these in the early days of COVID, about every other week, and then in the summer, just did one. But we will come back to them this fall, trying to do every other week, a different topic. Occasionally, it might just be a get together, um, but something where you can meet other students, other faculty, or even just watch the recording later, and just kind of keep abreast with what's going on with things. And today we have a guest speaker. Is your last name pronounced Loup?
It is, yes.
Okay, so it is Crystal Loup from the Student Health Center at LSU. Um, yeah, and I'll just hand things over to her.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see some like new faces too. I usually see the same ones in my meetings. So thank y'all so much. I'm Crystal Loup. I'm a wellness coordinator in the Student Health Center. I do general wellness coaching appointments with students on a variety of different issues, conduct HIV testing appointments, and I also work specifically in the Lighthouse Program, which is our interpersonal violence prevention, advocacy, and support program. So I have one-on-one appointments with students who are involved with that program, doing things like crisis management, offering emotional support and resources, and coordinating medical care, discussing reporting options, etc. I've been with LSU for about 1.5 years. And I also have experience prior to and currently doing therapy and counseling in the community, whether it's individual counseling, couples, family, and group. I have, like I said, this is always important to me. I have 2 cats and a dog. So you may hear them. I have locked them out of the room, but they may make an appearance in one way or another. Been married to my husband for like 14.5 years. We met at LSU and we have a 10-year-old son. So I am going to transition to a PowerPoint that I have. Please do let me know if something weird shows up on your end, or if what I'm saying is not coinciding with PowerPoint, or if you can't hear me at any time. I certainly invite you to let me know. All right. Can everybody see the PowerPoint? Okay, thank you. Good, love a nod. Okay, so just to kind of get started, I do want to give you all some information about the Student Health Center. Student Health Center services are accessible to any students who have paid the Student Health Center fee. You can look on your fees and tuition, your fee bill, just to see that. But we just want to make sure that everyone's aware that we are taking appropriate measures during this time. We have a separate admit area where students will enter the building, as well as some different check-in protocol. We are certainly cleaning and disinfecting, even more so, and we have hand washing available, etc. And we are keeping students that may have COVID symptoms in a separate area than other students who may be coming into the Student Health Center. And the other thing is that we are offering telehealth appointments. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So first, what I want to do is just start with a mindful moment. This is meant to be a stress management and coping sort of presentation and discussion. So I think it's really important for all of us that we can take a moment to pause, myself included. If you're not familiar with the concept of mindfulness, mindfulness is basically, but not easily, the idea of being present in the moment and refraining from judgment. It involves those 3 tenets. Like I said, it is sort of a simple concept, but may not be easy for everyone to execute. It takes lots of practice, just like any skill or exercise. So we'll practice a brief moment, maybe about a minute. And what I'll ask you to do is just get comfortable wherever you are. Feel free to leave your chair even if you need, but if you're sitting at your chair, I just ask you to try to get comfortable, maybe uncross your legs, relax your arms, place your hands maybe gently on your lap, and if you would like to, you can close your eyes for this moment. And if not, you can just gaze down towards the floor, just softly. And just slowly, I want you to start focusing on your breath. Simply notice the air going in your body as you inhale and then leave your body as you exhale. If you're able to breathe in and out through your nose and feel the air travel through your nose, just notice that process. Pay attention to the coolness or warmth right on the tip of your nose as the breath leaves and comes back in. If your mind wanders off to any thoughts, feelings, or sensations, just bring it back to focus once again on your breath. Pay attention to the movement of your body as you continue to breathe. Whatever your breath is doing, just notice how it feels. And I'll ask you to take one more slow inhale and then slowly exhale, even sighing it out if you feel comfortable doing so. And then when you're ready, you can either open your eyes or return your gaze to what's happening in the room. So now that we've practiced a little mindfulness, I hope that you can take some of that with you. It's an exercise you can do anytime, anywhere. And also I hope that that helps us really focus on just this moment, this 45 more minutes that we have together. So as I mentioned, I'm from the Student Health Center. We're located on campus physically, on Infirmary Road, past the School of Music, near the Enchanted Forest. We have 3 service areas. We have our medical clinic, our mental health service, and wellness and health promotion, and we are offering in-person and telehealth services. So regarding our telehealth services, all 3 of our service areas are providing these telehealth services. So that includes our medical clinic, so any medical appointments, as well as GYN services, our mental health services, including telehealth groups that are being facilitated by our therapists, and our wellness services, so wellness coaching, etc., and Lighthouse services. We do require a telehealth appointment prior to any in-person medical appointments, so students will need to schedule that just for a brief assessment, and then they can come in for a medical appointment following. We offer nutrition coaching services as well as have an eating disorder treatment team. So if anybody is interested in that, we have a full-time dietitian, and she works with our mental health and medical staff for our eating disorder treatment clients. And we have case management services. So if you are in need of services in the community, our case manager will help you get connected depending on any type of medical insurance or financial situation you might be in. And we are using Microsoft Teams. I just like to let everybody know it is HIPAA compliant, and you log in with your LSU credentials. So we are ensuring confidentiality throughout our telehealth appointments as well. These are just some resources. I encourage you to take a look at our website if you haven't already. We have a self-assessment tool. It's anonymous and you can fill it out at your leisure. It's called MindWise. So you can go to our website and access either a general assessment that asks you about a variety of generalized symptoms, or you can access more specific assessments that target specific symptoms or issues with mental health or behavior that you may be experiencing. Again, it's anonymous, so please, if you choose to do so, answer honestly, and it'll give you suggestions for your best sort of next steps in order to support your well-being. We have free audio downloads, so there's so much out there regarding like podcasts, relaxation, resources, meditations. We have some on our website too, though, if you're interested. And we've also developed during this whole COVID time a wellness education video channel that's on YouTube, and there's a link to it on our website. Our Tiger Tips videos, they offer just general medical, mental health, and wellness tips, including things like sleep hygiene, how to access our services. And we also have our emotional wisdom seminars on our website, which are facilitated by our mental health team. They discuss different relaxation strategies, ways to target symptoms of anxiety, depression, even PTSD symptoms. And we have our women's wellness class available there as well, which is intended for students to prepare for their first or for a GYN appointment. Now, we will get into sort of the meat of this presentation, which is about stress. I think probably all of us would say that we are stressed out with at least some frequency, and right now maybe more than typically. But I want to talk about what stress is first before we talk about ways that we can really target it and relieve it. So stress is the body's reaction to any change that requires an adjustment or response. It's normal, it's a part of life, and our body reacts to changes with different physical, mental, and emotional responses. We can experience stress from different triggers, like our environment, our own body, our thoughts, our relationships, and even positive changes in our lives can create stress. This could be something like promotions, graduation, starting school, a new relationship, the birth of a child. All of these things can create stress for us. Our human bodies are designed to experience this and respond to it. So as we experience stress, our bodies release cortisol, which is a hormone that is released into our bloodstream, and it's often called the stress hormone. Cortisol usually causes an increase in our heart rate and our blood pressure. It's usually paired with a fight or flight sort of experience. So as we know, the fight or flight response is typically a helpful response. It is something that we implement in order to keep ourselves safe from danger. So this response usually keeps us alert, motivated, and safe. It also helps us to adapt and keeps us resilient. Unfortunately, sometimes the amount of stress makes it so that we feel like we may actually break rather than respond in a more resilient way to stress. So our capacity can be limited to the amount of stress that is on us at one time. When stress is continuous and left untreated, it can lead to distress, which is a negative stress reaction. So that's not a helpful stress reaction. It's where we're actually disturbing sort of our internal balance. This is when we experience things like headaches, irritability, upset stomach, issues with our blood pressure, our heart rate, changes in our sex drive or sexual dysfunction. And this can really contribute to different symptoms of mental health issues, maybe things more severe like anxiety and depression, and can contribute to panic attacks. Stress can sometimes exacerbate other symptoms or illnesses, or can make us vulnerable or more prone to being susceptible to illness. So stress, if left untreated, can have harmful consequences. Okay, so this list is certainly not extensive enough, but let's talk about some of our current stressors right now. I want to talk about the term collective trauma. I personally really like that term to describe what we're experiencing right now with COVID-19. So collective trauma refers to the psychological upheaval that is shared by a group of people who all experience an event. This type of trauma can affect anyone and groups of people of any size. So even though there are a lot of jokes and memes and different articles about 2020 being like the worst year ever, in different ways it's being communicated, I think it's worth considering that some of the experiences that we're having can be perceived as collectively traumatic. And with trauma, there are stressors related to that that trigger each one of us in a unique way. And again, chronically left untreated can result in emotional consequences for us, like sadness, loneliness, anxiety, fear, grief, depression. There can also be behavioral consequences of this traumatic experience or of some of these issues that have resulted from our current situation, like increased hostility or aggression or changes in substance use. So regardless of what is personally going on with each one of us right now, we each have our own unique stressors, but unfortunately, in some ways, we have been forced to adapt because of COVID-19 when we haven't necessarily chosen it for ourselves. So in the same way that we've had to adapt with regards to the pandemic and changing our lives to really accommodate this new situation that we're in, it is imperative that we also adapt our stress relief strategies to meet our changing needs. So when I think about relieving stress, I want you each to think about how you might relieve stress. You can submit it in the chat if you want, or you can just think about it on your own. We can talk about it afterwards. But I know for myself, I typically would relieve stress by hanging out with friends. I like to go to the movies. I like to watch TV a lot. I could like really be a couch potato for life. And I also really loved going to a yoga class with my favorite yoga instructor 3 times a week. That was how I relieved a lot of my stress. So my stress management plan has been forced into changing during COVID-19. So first, hanging out with friends, going to the movies, etc. Some of that has changed because I can't really do that like I once used to. So even though this strategy that I used would still provide me a lot of relief, it's not really available to me anymore. Watching shows at home and being sort of like the couch potato that I love to be, that's really not satisfying to me at this time. Even when I'm taking a break from work, my son will ask me if I want to, if I want the remote. He's typically watching whatever 10-year-olds watch on YouTube. And I just look at him and I'm like, absolutely not. I do not want to look at a screen right now. I'd rather just like stare longingly out the window, go outside, even just stare at the wall. Because of increased screen time, that strategy of watching TV, particularly, on a break during the day, no longer serves me in the way that it once did. Regarding exercise in my yoga class, those are definitely skills that still help me when I'm able to do them, but I've had to modify how I access those skills during this time because my yoga class has been canceled. The gym was closed for a long time. So these strategies are still very helpful to me, but I've had to change how I access them. So as we talk about some of the strategies moving forward, I want you to think about sort of 3 or 4 different questions. One, what are some things that you did previously to relieve your stress that may not be as helpful to you now as they once were? 2, what are some things that you did to relieve stress that are not available to you anymore, that you may sort of have to let go of temporarily or find a replacement for? And then 3, what does that leave you with? What still helps you relieve your stress? And are there modifications that you need to make to increase or enhance your accessibility to those stress relieving activities? So that being said, even when I think about the yoga class that I took, I am so heartbroken still. So I really want to give us all a moment to just grieve some of the losses that we have experienced during this time. Grief is a natural response to any type of loss, and it has been said that the only cure for grief is to grieve. So grief may cause you to feel numb, empty, angry, unable to feel joy or even sadness. You can have physical symptoms with grief, including trouble sleeping, eating, sort of that feeling of like chronic nausea. You can feel fatigued, experience muscle weakness or shakiness. You can have nightmares, socially withdraw. If you're grieving right now due to any sort of loss, even the loss of a routine, I want you to know that it is normal, and you're not alone. Grieving loss is a normal response to losing something. Lastly, know that you can schedule an appointment with a provider at the health center or with a community provider if you do need additional support in processing this. The Student Health Center is also hosting an open grief group beginning in the fall semester, so that's something you can check out on our website as well. But take this moment to just acknowledge any loss that you may experience and may continue to experience. Another way to sort of address or relieve some of the stress, besides acknowledging your grief, is reducing some of our COVID risks. So I won't spend too much time on this, but I do want to acknowledge that taking these steps, while they may not eliminate all of our risks, they can help with some of the mental strain and anxiety that we experience, as well as improve our overall hygiene and cleanliness. Another way to address stress is by developing an adapted routine, particularly during this time. So even if you don't typically love abiding by a strict schedule, having a routine can be really helpful in times that are unpredictable, uncertain, or uncontrollable. Implementing structure of any kind to your day or your week can help give you a sense of control, especially when you feel like control may be so limited to you. It can also help improve your focus, your organization skills, and your overall productivity. So one thing we suggest, and this may be something that people have implemented in the past and maybe not implemented as much recently or trying to get back in the habit of doing, is creating some kind of to-do list each day. And the goal of the to-do list is not to beat yourself up when you don't get tasks completed, but it's more to organize what may be in your mind, get it on paper, and give yourself some kind of structure and some specific goals to target each day or week. Also incorporating new or former habits, maybe some that need to be like dusted off and recovered. Some of these habits might include just basic sort of foundational self-care practices like bathing regularly, getting dressed sometimes, making the bed, maybe even practices like filling a water bottle regularly, especially if your work setting or your day-to-day setting has changed, or eating at structured meal times like a breakfast, a lunch, a dinner, trying to have a snack. Those are things that may have been easier depending on what your life was like pre-COVID. If these things haven't changed for you, then consider if there are any new habits that you may need to implement into a routine. Also, consider your visual diet. So anything that we see can impact our mental health. Whether it's news, media, social media, there is this idea that what we consume, we actually sort of absorb in a way. There was a cool quote I saw that said, imagery, like anything else, can be healthy or harmful, addictive or nutritious. So assess your visual nutrition and try to limit what does not help you or benefit you. Also, Zoom fatigue and sort of this whole idea of video conferencing, this is a legitimate sort of phenomenon that's been coined during this time, but it does explain the unique exhaustion that we feel from being on virtual calls, more so than we typically would. So take breaks when possible and carve out time for yourself when needed. Also, finding ways to stay active is a really great way to relieve some of the chronic stress that we may be experiencing. So I won't go over all the benefits of physical activity, but I will remind you and me that physical activity benefits us physically, mentally, emotionally. It assists with mood management and getting quality sleep. So now is the time when a lot of us have to be really creative with regards to physical activity, particularly if, like me, some of the group activities that you used to do for exercise purposes are no longer available, and with increased sedentary time potentially at home. So if you don't exercise regularly, Don't be hard on yourself. Just try starting with something realistic. Maybe it's walking for 20 to 30 minutes 3 days a week. Maybe it's trying to walk every day. Maybe it's stretching a few days a week, or trying out a virtual group class, or even venturing out to a gym that may be open, including the UREC. UREC is also offering their Group X classes via Zoom. So if you're not comfortable going, all of their classes, I believe, are offered virtually, and some are only offered virtually. And the links are on their website. You don't have to pre-register. You can just click on the link and attend. I'm going to really plug yoga. I'm a real proponent of that. And so it is a physical activity, obviously, but it also incorporates mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness practices, and it's something you can practice anywhere. Along with most other physical activities and exercise, yoga reduces stress, lowers your blood pressure, helps with sleep, digestive issues, and it can boost your immune system. So when we talk about sleep, this is something that kind of makes my stomach hurt just looking at it. So quality sleep is really critical to our overall well-being and effective functioning of our immune systems. It helps us to combat stress, depression, and anxiety, and it also assists with memory, performance, mood regulation. So our sleep cycles, most of us have probably experienced some kind of dysregulation during this time if we hadn't experienced it before. Because of the pandemic, we may have more time indoors, our schedules may have changed. It may contribute to oversleeping in the mornings, or staying awake later at night, or taking more naps. And stress can also contribute to insomnia or other types of sleep issues. Substances can do so as well. So if any changes have occurred with regards to substance use, just know that nicotine, alcohol, and cannabis can disrupt natural sleep cycles. So if you find it difficult to implement the 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night, and paying attention to some of these routines related to sleep, again, I encourage you, you can schedule a wellness coaching appointment with someone in wellness and health promotion, and we can talk with you about different sleep hygiene strategies, as well as creating a sleep diary to kind of start monitoring your sleep behaviors. And last but not least, this is another stress reduction strategy that it seems really simple, but it's so important. Tend to your thoughts and feelings, especially during this time. We practiced a mindfulness exercise at the beginning of this presentation, and that, again, is something that you can utilize with you at any time, much like deep breathing. So that practice was centered around breathing, and deep breathing is a skill that is also at our disposal and can be practiced anywhere. So typically during the day, and particularly when we're stressed, we take very quick, shallow breaths from our chest. This type of breathing can increase our heart rate, our blood pressure, and make us feel more anxious overall. So deep breathing is a practice that is implemented by taking slow, deep belly breaths. And if you're unsure of how to practice this, I suggest laying down somewhere with a book on your stomach and trying to see if you can get the book to rise as you inhale and then fall as you exhale. And so even watching the motion of the book rising and falling may help you to practice deep breathing even with a slower pattern. The pace of our breathing can change our heart rate and our blood pressure. And so this is a really great skill when you're feeling anxious, or even preemptively, to kind of target some of that stress and anxiety. Grounding is really specific. It's similar to mindfulness in the sense that it involves you using your senses to be present in the moment. Grounding can be known as a way to absorb the electromagnetic charge of the earth through physical touch, so by actually planting your bare feet on the earth. But it can also be known therapeutically as a way to connect with the present, balance your cortisol levels, and reduce the stress response. So if you can find a way to stand, lay, or sit wherever you are, and kind of press your feet on the ground, press your body to the chair, whatever setting you're in, and start to notice the feeling of what is around you using your sense of touch, and utilize your other senses to really tune into the present moment, that's a way to exercise grounding skills. And this helps us not only to pay attention, but to reduce anxiety. Gratitude is also a practice that can help improve our overall well-being due to the practice of letting go. This can often have mental and emotional impacts or improvements. And sort of that idea of letting go of toxic energy, negativity, and things like that. It can be a skill that helps us develop resilience and improve our self-esteem and relationships, even if that improvement involves setting boundaries with others. I suggest typically practicing daily gratitudes if possible, just by listing, even if it's only mentally, 5 to 10 things that you're grateful for each day. It can be something as small as a bird in a tree outside, or as great as the gift of life, if that is how you perceive it. And then lastly, the emotional management plan. This may require a little bit more work, so to speak, but this is a great practice to help us deal with emotions that may be difficult or unwanted. So I encourage you, if 3 emotions are challenging for you to find, even start with 1 emotion. So think about what emotion may be most distressing to you. Maybe it's the emotion of sadness, loneliness, anger. For a lot of us, those emotions are not wanted. List that emotion out, and then for that specific emotion, try to find 2 to 3 healthy ways that you can cope with it. That may include some of the skills that we talked about previously, like deep breathing, exercise, but it may involve something different, like confronting a loved one, particularly if the emotion is, anger, and it is a more relational issue. List those ways that you can cope. Actually write this down somewhere or put it in a device. And when the emotion hits, look back at your plan and see if you can use some of those ways that you listed to cope. If you need additional assistance with this, again, please seek support. You can schedule an appointment for a wellness coaching session with one of us in wellness, or for a mental health session upstairs on the 2nd floor via telehealth. There's our main number if you would like to do so. I also put just some 24-hour phone and text options, particularly during this time. This is, like I said, can be a collectively traumatic experience for many of us, and this is a time of crisis for a lot of individuals. So please know that there are ways you can reach out for help. The phone is LSU's 24-hour phone and text service, and so if you're uncomfortable making a phone call, know that they have text support, and it's paraprofessionals that are there to help you through crisis and provide emotional support. And these are for you, and there is my contact information, so please feel free to jot that down. I am available to answer questions or if y'all need anything. And that's it for the presentation. I'd like to invite time for question, concerns, discussion. Any thoughts on what we discussed?
Hey,